Don't waste your money on a nameplate. Behind that luxury badge, you might be getting the exact same car as a cheaper model, same engine, same parts, same factory. In this video, we're exposing 25 rebadged cars that fooled buyers into overpaying for style instead of substance. Some of these might save you thousands. And wait till you see number 2 and number 1, you won't believe who's copying who. Because at the end of the day, you should buy the car, not the brand. Let's jump in. Number 25. GMC Yukon, Chevrolet Tahoe. Let's start with two full-size SUVs that most buyers assume are completely different, the GMC Yukon and the Chevrolet Tahoe. But here's the truth. These vehicles are virtually identical underneath. They ride on the exact same chassis. They use the same engines. Even their dimensions, suspension systems, and tech features are the same. Both come from General Motors and are built on the GMC T1XX platform, which also supports the Cadillac Escalade. So what's different? Mostly the styling and badging. The Yukon usually features a bolder front grille, slightly different headlights, and a more upscale interior design. GMC also positions itself as more premium than Chevy, so some trim levels on the Yukon might include features that are optional on the Tahoe. But from a mechanical standpoint, you're looking at the same SUV. Number 24. Eagle Talon Mitsubishi Eclipse. Next, we head into the world of sporty coupes from the 1990s with the Eagle Talon and the Mitsubishi Eclipse. These cars were born from a collaboration between Mitsubishi and Chrysler, which formed Diamond Star Motors DSM. Built in the same factory, same engines, same bones, you could swap badges and no one would notice. Most versions even came with the option of a turbocharged engine and all-wheel drive, which made them fan favorites among tuners and street racers. So what sets them apart? Not much, mainly cosmetic tweaks. The Talon featured a distinct rear spoiler, different taillight designs, and eagle badging. Mitsubishi had slightly more trim options, but under the hood it was all DSM. Today, many enthusiasts refer to these as DSM twins because of how close they are in every meaningful way. Number 23. Hyundai Entourage, Kia Sedona. Now let's talk about the Hyundai Entourage and the Kia Sedona. If you thought these two minivans just looked similar, you're not wrong, but it goes deeper than that. These were platform-sharing minivans, developed during a time when Hyundai and Kia were tightening their manufacturing ties. The Entourage was essentially a clone of the Sedona, using the same V6 engine, same transmission, and nearly identical body panels. The only real differences? The front fascia and interior trim. Some Entourage models came with a slightly softer ride or more premium cabin materials depending on the trim level, but mechanically, they were twins. They even shared the same parts catalog, which means many replacement components are completely interchangeable. If you owned one, you could walk into a parts store and buy Sedona brake pads or filters for your Entourage, and they'd fit perfectly. Number 22. Chrysler Town & Country, Dodge Grand Caravan. Next up are the minivan legends, the Chrysler Town & Country and the Dodge Grand Caravan. These two have confused countless families in dealership lots, and for good reason, they're basically the same van with different packaging. Both were built by Chrysler and used the same platform, engines, and mechanical layout. They offered stow-and-go seating, similar infotainment systems, and were even assembled on the same production lines. The Town & Country was just positioned as the more luxurious option. You'd often find leather seats, wood grain trim, and chrome accents, while the Grand Caravan leaned more budget-friendly. But when it came to repairs, fuel economy, or interior space, no difference. In fact, mechanics often joke that diagnosing one is the same as diagnosing the other. It's all Chrysler underneath. Number 21. Acura SLX, Isuzu Trooper. We also have one of Acura's earliest attempts at an SUV, the Acura SLX. At first glance, it looked like a proper luxury off-roader, but under the surface, it was really an Isuzu Trooper in upscale clothing. The SLX shared everything with the Trooper, the body-on-frame construction, the four-wheel drive system, and the same 3.2-liter V6 engine. Acura added a more refined interior and some luxury touches, like wood trim and leather seats, but the driving experience remained very much like an Isuzu. Interestingly, the SLX was one of the few Acura models that wasn't designed by Honda, but instead rebadged from an outside manufacturer. It didn't perform well in sales, partly because it lacked the brand identity Acura buyers were used to. It quietly disappeared by the end of the 90s, and Acura wouldn't return to the SUV game in full force until the MDX arrived in 2001, a vehicle developed entirely in-house. Number 20. Dodge Neon's second generation, Chrysler PT Cruiser platform. You might not guess it at first glance, but the second generation Dodge Neon and the Chrysler PT Cruiser actually share more in common than you'd think. At first glance, one is a compact sedan, and the other is a retro-styled hatchback with wagon vibes. But underneath those very different bodies, they share the same foundation. Both vehicles were built on Chrysler's PL platform, which was originally developed for the Neon. This means they had the same wheelbase, the same basic suspension layout, and in many cases, the same powertrain options. If you lifted the bodies off their frames, you'd find nearly identical underpinnings. What made the PT Cruiser stand out was its unique styling. It was designed to look like a blend between a 1930s hot rod and a modern hatch, and that styling helped Chrysler market it to an entirely different audience. Meanwhile, the Neon was aimed at economy car buyers. So while one car said budget commuter, the other screamed quirky lifestyle vehicle. But they were cut from the same cloth. Number 19. Acura ILX, early gen, Honda Civic. Now we turn to the Acura ILX, a compact car that had more than a few buyers thinking it was a luxury model. But if you've ever sat inside an early ILX, something might have felt familiar. That's because the first-gen ILX was almost entirely based on the Honda Civic. Specifically, it used the same chassis, the same engine architecture, and very similar interior dimensions. Even the infotainment and button layout was nearly a carbon copy of the Civic, just wrapped in a flashier design. Acura tried to elevate the ILX by giving it leather seats, quieter cabin materials, and a few extra features like adaptive lighting and keyless entry. But at the end of the day, most of what you were paying for was badging and branding. This wasn't a bad thing necessarily. The Civic platform is reliable and well-engineered. But it does raise a question. Is it worth paying a premium for an Acura if the heart of the car is all Honda? Number 18. Lexus ES 300, 330, 350, and Toyota Camry. Now, let's look at one of the most successful examples of badge engineering that people rarely question: the Lexus ES series and the Toyota Camry. Since the ES 250 launched in the early 90s, every generation of Lexus ES has been based heavily on the Toyota Camry. The ES 300, 330, and 350 all share Camry platforms, engines, and often even transmission units. The big difference is in the ride quality, interior materials, and noise insulation. Lexus takes the Camry skeleton and dresses it in upscale finishes. So if you're buying the Lexus, what you're really paying for is the luxury experience, not necessarily a more advanced machine. Number 17. Mercury Mountaineer Ford Explorer. Moving on to SUVs, let's talk about the Mercury Mountaineer and the Ford Explorer. This one's a classic case of badge engineering where the differences were purely cosmetic and branding based. Mechanically, the Mountaineer is a Ford Explorer in disguise. It used the same 4.6-liter V8 engines, shared the same transmission, drivetrain, and body-on-frame architecture. Mercury tried to position the Mountaineer as the nicer version. You'd typically get chrome trim, faux wood in the cabin, and some upgraded leather seats. But when it came to performance or reliability, there was zero difference. In fact, many dealerships would even service them using the same parts, regardless of whether it was an Explorer or Mountaineer. This model lasted from 1997 to 2010 before Mercury was finally shut down. After that, Ford just kept selling the Explorer, proving that you don't need two names for the same truck. Number 16. Mercury Mariner, Ford Escape. Let's move on to compact SUVs, such as the Mercury Mariner and the Ford Escape. If you've seen both on the road, you might have thought, wait a second, aren't those the same? And you'd be right. These two crossovers were essentially twins. Both were based on Ford's CD2 platform, and both used the same engines, transmissions, and suspension setups. The Mariner was meant to be the more refined option, offering nicer trim pieces, chrome accents, and slightly different styling. But when it came to what really mattered, how they drove, how they handled, and how they performed, eventually the Mariner was discontinued along with the Mercury brand, and the Escape just kept on climbing sales charts. Number 15. Chevrolet Colorado, Isuzu I-Series pickup. The Chevrolet Colorado and Isuzu I-Series pickup share more history than most realize. Back in the mid-2000s, Isuzu was losing ground in the US market. They no longer had the resources to develop a competitive mid-size truck of their own, so they turned to General Motors, their longtime partner. The solution? Rebadge the Chevy Colorado. The result was the Isuzu I-Series, which debuted in 2005. Underneath, it was exactly the same as the Colorado. Same engine lineup, same chassis, same transmission, and even the same bed dimensions. Isuzu barely changed anything, aside from minor tweaks to the grille and a new badge slapped on the tailgate. The I-Series came in two flavors, the i280 and the i350. It was literally a one-to-one copy of the Colorado, but with fewer trim options. The truck didn't sell well. Buyers realized they could get the same thing, often cheaper by just buying the Chevy version. The Isuzu I-Series disappeared from the market in 2008, quietly ending one of the most obvious rebadge plays in truck history. Number 14. GMC Sierra, Chevrolet Silverado. Next up, let's talk about two trucks that still confuse people today, the GMC Sierra and the Chevrolet Silverado. You've probably seen them both on the road, often side by side, and thought, are these just the same truck? The answer is yes, they are. Both the Sierra and Silverado are built on the same production lines, using the same frame, same suspension setup, and identical engines. In fact, if you stripped the badges off and sat inside either one, it'd be hard to tell which brand you were in. So, what's the difference? GMC tends to market itself as a professional-grade brand, often targeting buyers who want a slightly more refined or upscale look. That translates to more chrome, slightly different headlight designs, and sometimes quieter interior insulation. But mechanically, there is no meaningful difference between a Sierra and a Silverado with the same trim level. In other words, if you're shopping based on capability, towing power, payload, engine reliability, you're buying the same truck. You're just picking a badge and a style. Number 13. Suzuki SX4, Fiat Sedici. Let's shift gears and talk about a model that's often overlooked. The Suzuki SX4, also sold in some markets as the Fiat Sedici. While it never made headlines like bigger names in the compact crossover space, it carved out a niche for drivers who value simplicity, affordability, and all-weather capability. The SX4 was one of the earlier compact crossovers to offer available all-wheel drive, making it a smart option for budget-minded drivers in snowy or rural areas. Its size made it easy to maneuver in tight urban streets, yet the raised ride height gave it a slightly more rugged, confident stance. Inside, the cabin was basic but functional. It came with straightforward controls, decent cargo space for its size, and a no-frills approach that made it easy to maintain. Before we move into the next rebadged surprise, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. That way, you won't miss any of our deep dives into the wild side of the auto industry. Number 12. Chevy City Express, Nissan NV200. Here's a rebadge that likely flew under the radar for many commercial van drivers, the Chevy City Express and the Nissan NV200. This is one of the most straightforward examples of badge engineering in recent years. The City Express is essentially a Nissan NV200 in disguise, wearing a Chevrolet badge. GM didn't build it, design it, or engineer it. They simply made a deal with Nissan to sell the same van through Chevy dealers. Mechanically, everything is identical. Same 2.0-liter engine, same CVT transmission, same cargo capacity, and same interior layout. Even the headlight design and body panels are unchanged. The idea was to give Chevy customers a small work van option without having to develop one in-house. It was a cost-saving move, but savvy buyers quickly noticed the similarities and often opted for the Nissan version instead. The City Express only lasted from 2015 to 2018 before it was discontinued. It's a prime example of badge swapping for convenience, not differentiation. Number 11. Geostorm Isuzu Impulse. The Geostorm might have looked like a standalone 90s coupe, but it had surprising ties to another automaker. On the surface, it looked like a unique sporty hatchback targeted at young drivers. But under the hood, the Storm was actually a rebadged version of the Isuzu Impulse. Both were built by Isuzu and shared the same chassis, engine lineup, and even interior layout. The main difference came down to styling. The Storm had a more rounded, accessible design for the American market, while the Impulse leaned slightly more angular and aggressive. But mechanically, they were basically twins. Each model came equipped with either a 1.6-liter or 1.8-liter four-cylinder engine. Performance wasn't mind-blowing, but the cars handled well and were affordable to own. They even offered Lotus-tuned suspension in some trims, which gave these small coupes surprisingly sharp handling for the price. Geo was GM's short-lived attempt to sell imported compact cars under a new youth-focused brand. So, while the badge said Geo, what you were really driving was an Isuzu in disguise. Number 10. Dodge Omni, Plymouth Horizon. In the world of American economy cars, the Dodge Omni and Plymouth Horizon stood out as early game-changers during the late 70s and 80s. These two were essentially the same car, built by Chrysler to compete with the wave of fuel-efficient imports hitting the US at the time. Both the Omni and Horizon rode on the same platform and featured identical powertrains, interiors, and suspension systems. They were assembled at the same factories, side by side. Mechanically, there was no difference at all. What set them apart was strictly the badge on the hood and some minor styling cues. These cars were Chrysler's first front-wheel drive compacts and were incredibly important during an era of high gas prices. Although not glamorous, they were functional, affordable, and widely sold. Number 9. Saturn Aura, Pontiac G6. Another example from the mid-2000s is the GM sedan pairing of the Saturn Aura and the Pontiac G6. Both were based on GM's Epsilon platform, which also supported cars like the Chevy Malibu. While the body styling was slightly different, the wheelbase, engine choices, and even door frames were shared. The Pontiac G6 leaned toward sportiness, with sharper styling and more aggressive marketing. The Saturn Aura went for a more refined, European-influenced vibe, especially in its XR trim, which had options like a 3.6-liter V6 and paddle shifters. Inside, the dashboards were rearranged, but the bones were the same. If you drove both back-to-back, the handling and ride would feel nearly identical. This was the GM trying to create different personalities from a single base, but ultimately, they were variations of the same machine. Number 8. Geo Tracker, Suzuki Sidekick. These two early compact SUVs, the Geo Tracker and Suzuki Sidekick, were practically identical under the surface. This is one of the clearest examples of badge engineering from the 1990s. These two SUVs weren't just similar, they were manufactured side by side, built by a joint venture between General Motors and Suzuki. The Tracker and Sidekick shared the same ladder frame chassis, same 1.6-liter engine, same transmission, and even the same quirky, boxy styling. The only real differences were cosmetic. A different grille here, a different badge there. Even the keys, steering wheels, and gauge clusters were identical in early models. Some owners have even reported swapping doors between the two without modification. The Tracker was originally sold under the Geo brand and later became a Chevrolet. Both were surprisingly capable off-road for their size, and today they're cult favorites among people looking for compact trail rigs on a budget. So if you ever wondered why that Geo Tracker felt so much like a Suzuki, it's because it was. Number 7. Chevy Blazer EV, Honda Prologue. Now, let's move into the electric era with two new models that look very different on the outside, but underneath, they're the same: the Chevy Blazer EV and the Honda Prologue. This pairing comes from a recent collaboration between General Motors and Honda, where GM supplies its Ultium EV platform to Honda for their upcoming electric models. The Honda Prologue is built on the same underpinnings as the Blazer EV. This means it shares the same battery architecture, electric motors, and even interior electronics in many cases. Honda designed the exterior and interior to match their styling language, but the tech powering it all comes from GM. For buyers, this means you're getting Honda looks and branding, but with a Chevrolet EV drivetrain underneath. The partnership helps Honda catch up in the EV space without starting from scratch, and it gives GM a way to scale its Ultium platform across multiple markets. Number 6. Dodge Shadow, Plymouth Sundance, Chrysler ES. In the early 90s, Chrysler offered three nearly identical compacts under different badges: the Dodge Shadow, Plymouth Sundance, and Chrysler ES. All three were built on Chrysler's Peabody platform, and all three shared nearly everything: body panels, engines, suspension, and even interior plastics. The Chrysler ES was essentially just a trim-heavy version of the Shadow and Sundance, sold with a bit more upscale appeal and price. Dodge aimed for young drivers with a sportier image, while Plymouth pitched theirs as the value choice. But under the hood, same car, same experience. Today these models are mostly forgotten, but they were a prime example of how Chrysler used badge engineering to stretch a single design across three brands. Number 5. Infiniti G35/G37, Nissan Skyline. This next rebadge flips the script. In Japan, it's the revered Nissan Skyline, but in North America, it quietly arrived as the Infiniti G35, eventually evolving into the G37. Both models were based on the V35 and V36 generations of the Nissan Skyline sedan and coupe. While the G35 and G37 were marketed as premium sports sedans under Nissan's luxury brand Infiniti, their DNA came directly from the Japanese market Skyline. These vehicles shared the same FM platform, the same VQ series engines, and the same overall structure. Even the suspension tuning was similar. Infiniti added more upscale materials and tailored the G-Series to American tastes. But make no mistake, under the leather and chrome, you were driving a modern-day Skyline. Number 4. Toyota Urban Cruiser, Suzuki Vitara Brezza. Next, we head to India, where the Toyota Urban Cruiser and the Suzuki Vitara Brezza highlight one of the most direct badge swaps in recent memory. These compact SUVs are part of a collaboration between Toyota and Suzuki, where each brand shares models to expand reach without duplicating development. Toyota's Urban Cruiser is basically the Vitara Brezza, rebranded for a different market. Both share the same chassis, the same 1.5-liter petrol engine, and even the same dashboard layout. From headlight shapes to infotainment systems, there's very little that sets them apart. Toyota did make a few tweaks to the front grille and added some soft-touch materials in higher trims, but overall, the changes are minimal. For buyers, this means you're getting Suzuki engineering with a Toyota logo, and, depending on the market, possibly different financing or warranty deals. It's smart business, but not exactly a unique vehicle. Number 3. Plymouth Breeze, Dodge Stratus, Chrysler Cirrus. Most people didn't notice it at the time, but the Plymouth Breeze, Dodge Stratus, and Chrysler Cirrus were essentially the same sedan dressed in different badges. These were known internally as the Cloud Cars because each model name sounded weather-related. All three were built by Chrysler on the same JA platform, and they were marketed as mid-size sedans with different personalities. But under the sheet metal, they were identical in almost every way. Each one shared the same chassis, suspension setup, and engine options. What separated them was mostly branding and minor trim differences. The Cirrus stood out as the luxury trim, offering features like chrome finishes and leather interiors. The Dodge Stratus was meant to feel sporty, with a more aggressive look. Meanwhile, the Plymouth Breeze was the budget-friendly version. They might wear different badges, but back-to-back drives reveal how alike they truly are. Number 2. Toyota Glanza, Suzuki Baleno. This next case of badge engineering quietly slipped by unnoticed by many. One of the most visible results is the Toyota Glanza, which is a direct rebadge of the Suzuki Baleno. These two models ride on Suzuki's Hardect platform, use the same 1.2-liter petrol engine, come with the same CVT gearbox, and feature interiors that are nearly indistinguishable. The only differences are minor cosmetic changes, like the front grille design and badge. Toyota didn't even try to hide the similarities. The Glanza is, at its core, a Baleno dressed with Toyota badging and backed by a slightly better warranty package. In fact, many mechanics in India consider them interchangeable when it comes to service and parts. This rebadge exists purely for market strategy. It allows Toyota to sell small cars without having to develop them, while Suzuki gets help with sales and distribution. It's a win-win for the companies, even if it leaves buyers scratching their heads. Number 1. Honda Passport, Isuzu Rodeo. Lastly, Honda's first steps into the SUV world came in the early 90s by borrowing a model already on the market and making it their own. Back then, Honda had no SUV in its lineup. The CR-V didn't exist yet, and developing a rugged off-roader from scratch would take years. So instead, Honda borrowed from Isuzu, which was already well established in the SUV space. The result was the first-generation Honda Passport, which was nothing more than a rebadged Isuzu Rodeo. Everything, the frame, the engine, the interior layout, and even the body panels came directly from Isuzu. Honda added its own badging and minor trim changes, but that was it. What made this even more interesting is that the Passport was assembled by Subaru Isuzu Automotive in Indiana, not by Honda itself. So it was essentially an American-built, Japanese-designed SUV wearing a Honda badge. For Honda, this move filled a gap in their lineup and let them compete in the growing SUV segment. But for anyone who knew the backstory, the Passport wasn't really a Honda at all. We've just explored 25 cars that prove one thing: a different badge doesn't always mean a different car. From economy compacts to luxury SUVs and performance icons, these rebadged twins show just how blurred the lines really are in today's auto industry. Did we miss a pair of secret siblings you've spotted on the road? Drop it in the comments. We'd love to hear your favorite lookalike. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss a deep dive into the auto world's best-kept secrets.